Hi everyone, it's Miss Price, and today we're talking about smiley face tricks. Today's trick is specific details for effect. Now we're going to take some notes, so we want to get our spiral and our computer ready, and we're also going to practice some, so we want our writer's notebook handy as well. Let's do a real quick reminder as to what smiley face tricks really are. Remember, those are the tricks that good writers are using in their writing. They use them to enhance their writing, to draw the reader in, and make sure the reader's interested in what they have to say. They're a great way of spicing up the language and the text so that it's interesting. Smiley face tricks provide that imagery. They allow the reader to see and hear and imagine and picture everything that you are as a writer. But most importantly, smiley face tricks lead to that show, not tell that we really want. We don't want to make announcements. We want the reader to be shown what we are talking about. Remember, there are 8 different types of tricks. Specific details for effect is the trick we're talking about right now. We'll look at the other 7 tricks a different day. All right, let's get ready to take those notes in our spiral or on our computer. Let's go ahead and write this screen down, the definition of specific details for effect. What it really just is it's a trick where we use very specific sensory details to help the reader imagine and picture what we're talking about. We're not going to use vague or ordinary ways of talking about things. We're going to kind of spice up our writing with a little bit more sensory imagery. And the really cool thing about specific details for effect is that we are looking at something very ordinary, kind of in an unordinary way, in a way that others wouldn't even think about it, where other people would stop and say, I hadn't considered that, or thinking of it in that way. Kind of catches us off guard. Now, specific details for effect, I think, is one of the hardest tricks to do. Especially for those of us like me who are very just ordinary, what I call vanilla writers. We kind of get to the point. This is a very creative writing kind of trick to use. And so for some of us, we actually have to work at this one pretty hard because we're not really creative writers. We can use this trick really in any kind of writing. It's probably best suited for creative writing, stories and narratives and things like that. But we can find it in other types of writing if the opportunity arises where we can use it. Now, over the next slides, I'm going to give you lots of examples, and we're going to talk about most of them, but not all of them. But I want you to read them all and choose 3 or 4 of them that you think really provide you a good example of what specific details for effect is. Now, the more examples you write down, I think the better. So don't do just 1 or 2 examples. Really push yourself to find some good ones that really will tell you and remind you weeks from now what specific details for effect really is all about. Because like I said, this is a really challenging smiley face trick, and you're going to need to rise to the occasion. So get yourself some good examples to help you out later on. All right, so let's get started looking at what I'm talking about when I say specific details for effect. This first one is a great example because the author could have simply just said, the cat purred. But instead, she says it in a completely unordinary way. So right away, my cat padded over to me and meowed. The motorboat in his gut revved up, and I buried my face in his fur. What a great way to say that, because she could have simply said, my cat purred, and as I buried my face in his fur. And I just think that by saying that the motorboat in his gut revved up, what a great way to talk about it. It's a great use of metaphor. It's a great way to make the reader actually have to do some work. You're not announcing anything, you're not telling the reader anything, but you're showing the reader something and you're making the reader actually have to work for it. And that's good writing. The next one I like, even though the author literally came out and said the right-hander threw so hard, what was great about this next one is he followed it up with specific details for effect. So now we get to see how hard that ball was thrown. The ball sent out a silent whistle that set dogs to howling a full mile away. And that is great description. So even though he announced the player threw hard, he also followed that up with very good specific details for effect. Now the next one I absolutely love. It's just kind of a little drop in the bucket example of specific details for effect. Her fingernails held at least 10 anthills of dirt under them. And if we think to ourselves, what could she really have said? She could have simply said her fingernails were dirty. But instead, she makes us as the reader work for it. And she makes us say to ourselves, wow, those fingernails must have been really dirty, when she says at least 10 anthills of dirt under them. What a great use of specific details for effect. This next one's a good example. You kind of have to use a little background knowledge. So you kind of have to know when the Vietnam War took place in the 1960s. You kind of have to know what shock absorbers are used for in a car. But if you know those kind of things, then you really get this one because we were in her ancient Jeep that had lost its shock absorbers sometime during the Vietnam War. And we as the reader get to say, wow, that must have been one bumpy ride. That must have been a really bad ride because we know that the shock absorbers apparently didn't work. So that's a great example of specific details for effect. And so is the next one. And it's a good use, again, of a metaphor and talking about the surf of exhaustion rolling toward him, cresting like an ocean wave coming to shore. And we think to ourselves, oh, he must have been really tired. I like this second one on this page. On a night, even demons howl for their mothers. Josh stood on the edge of the highway thumbing a ride. And what I really like about this one is that imagery. I love what it's producing because we know that demons are supposed to be very scary and we're scared of demons, but we know our mothers provide us comfort. So for a demon to want its mother for comfort, it tells us that must have been one scary night. And I always picture the night being like pitch black and rainy and really terrible out, and Josh is standing there alone, thumbing for a ride. It just produces some really great imagery. On this next page, the one I really love is that second one again, because I love the imagery. I can totally picture this. You know, I cracked the window open, a tongue of shivery cold air reached into the room and licked my arm. I just love what that produces in my mind. Rather than simply saying, you know, a cold breeze blew in, we're giving that cold breeze action and we're giving it life and we're giving us some imagery for us to imagine what that cold breeze felt like. I just love that example. The next one down was by one of my students. I like this one because, again, it's just those little drop in the bucket, specific details for effect. My lips almost touched my ears as I triumphantly jogged around the bases. Again, she could have just simply said, I smiled really big, but she didn't. And we get to figure out from the fact that her lips are touching her ears that, wow, she must have been smiling really big. So I like that example. Good one. I like these as well. The first one, I think again, the author could have just simply said that Hugo fell through the floor, but it's kind of funny and clever to say an abrupt shortcut to the basement. It kind of makes us chuckle a little because we can picture someone falling through the floor and heading to the basement. I like the third one down. That one is again from one of my students. The boys and I ran off with fear in our footsteps. And I like that one because she could have simply said the boys and I were scared and ran off. But to say that there was fear in our footsteps, she doesn't even have to say the word scared. And we already feel it. We already can picture it and imagine that they're scared as they run. So what a great example there. On this one, I like the first one because, again, he's looking at a fight in a very unordinary way. So I fought almost daily and still wore the scars. And I like the way he says that he still wears the scars. But I decorated a few bodies too. And what a great way to say that I fought back and the others were hurt too. Without having to come right out and explain all that, without having to say that I fought them and I beat them up and they now have scars themselves. He just says, I decorated a few bodies, and we as the reader get to figure all that other out. And so that's a good use of specific details for effect. And then the last one I love too, because again, she talks about the teeth of winter. So rather just saying the word cold, she's going to give winter some life and use a metaphor and really spice up that writing. So these are all great examples of specific details for effect. If you need to, go back, find some examples for you to write in your notebook. All right. What we're going to do is just look at some reminders, some real quick reminders to write down. Just remember this isn't just a list of adjectives. You're not saying the purple and blue polka dotted birthday cake had candles shooting out the side. You're actually getting in there and looking at something ordinary in a very different way. Don't forget to show and not tell what you're talking about. Again, it's not bad to make the reader work for it, make the reader think about what you mean. As long as you're clear about what you mean, it's not a bad thing to make us work a little bit. Don't announce everything. Remember to use your senses, and you can always use other smiley face tricks to help in your specific details for effect, especially figurative language. Figurative language is a great way to help out specific details for effect. All right, let's put those spirals away. Let's put the computer away and let's grab that writer's notebook because now we're getting ready to practice. And I want you to try this. And again, this would be really hard for me. I would have to work at this very hard and I probably would not be successful in my first couple of tries. So I'd have to do it several times. But I want you to think about a carnival or amusement park, either one, and I want you to use specific details for effect to describe something, anything. You can describe a ride, you can describe what you see, you can describe something that you're smelling, you can describe how you're feeling, anything you want. Anything at a carnival or amusement park really can be described using specific details for effect. And so I just want you to try, just give it a try. When you come back to class and we listen to them, we'll kind of help you out and see how you're doing. But I want you to try this very hard smiley face trick out and just see what you can do with it. All right, I look forward to hearing your examples when I see you in class.